There are two things in this life that are absolutely guaranteed, and it's death and taxes. And I feel like we definitely don't focus on the former a lot. Well, taxes, I guess not everybody really focuses on either, because if we actually did, maybe we would have a good tax rate. But either way, I'm here to talk about death though, because even with taxes, taxes are taken out of our paycheck, so we kind of have some sense that taxes are always going to happen. And obviously, whenever we get the tax refund at the end of the fiscal year, but death is something that nobody wants to talk about, nobody wants to focus on, and nobody wants to really acknowledge that it is a reality of life. See, I've been to a lot of funerals throughout my life, and obviously I'm probably going to end up going to a lot more. And there's only been a very handful of funerals that I can actually point to and say that the family members or the loved ones actually said, hey, it was just this person's time to go. The majority of funerals that I've went to, there's always been a sense of, or at least a saying from the family members or the loved ones that, oh, this person went by too soon, even though the person was probably in their old age and, are not able to function anymore. It's still a sense of like, why did death come right now? It should have came later. And I think that feeling and that sentiment actually comes from us thinking that death is some far away thing that is going to happen in our old age, that is going to happen in the future. Then, when we have all of our affairs settled, we're just going to peacefully die at our sleep and go. And that could be anything further from the reality of things, right? You go or drive on the roads, you'll probably see a car accident. You don't know if that person lost their life or not. And even though death is one of the things that is absolutely guaranteed to us, we think and act like it doesn't exist. We don't let it dictate our actions, we don't let it dictate our future, and we don't let it dictate really anything in our life. And we think that death does actually not exist until it inevitably actually comes for us or comes for one of our loved ones, and we are deeply affected by that. And this is one of the conversations that I feel like a lot of people are just very uncomfortable with having until they absolutely have to. But you kind of have to prepare yourself to have this conversation, because death is going to come for you. It's going to come for your family, for your loved ones, for your friends. Everybody around you is eventually going to die. That is a reality. Not everybody gets a chance of life. There's a lot of stillborn babies that are born that are just dead, right? It's a very sad reality, but they never even got the chance of life. So life is not guaranteed, but death obviously was. And see, all the funerals that we attend, all the news that we get about how many people have been dying all over the world, we always have some like cognitive dissonance from it. We separate ourselves from those events and think that this is not going to be me. All the funerals that you go to, all of the bodies that you have to bury, you always think that this is not me. This is not anybody that I love. These are not my parents. These are not my friends. So you have this emotional detachment from the actual event, which causes you not to think deeply about that. And in reality, it's probably one of the worst things that you can do, because a fool learns from his own mistakes, but a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. So if you hear about death, if you hear about somebody dying and they died in a very tragic way, or they died while not speaking to a family member, why shouldn't you go ahead and get your act together? Are you a fool or are you a wise man? And since we have this cognitive dissonance from any funeral that we actually go to, we tend to forget that death is literally just lurking in the shadows for us and for our loved ones. And it sounds morbid, right? Good, because it's supposed to sound morbid. So what can we exactly do when it comes to thinking about death, when it comes to living our life in general? Do we just become depressed and we just don't do anything? Is that the option that we have? Do we just become depressed and we just don't do anything with our lives because we're just so scared that we're gonna die eventually, maybe even today or maybe even tomorrow? So we just are not productive at all. We don't follow our dreams, follow our passions. Well, no, that's just a defeatist mentality. You should make the most out of the life that you are given, but you should always know the end game of the game that you are playing. And death is the ultimate reality. You're going to be buried. You're going to turn to dust. So you shouldn't become depressed about that. It should somewhat make you sad, but it should also somewhat make you happy. It should keep you grounded, and it should keep you on a baseline so that it actually dictates all of your actions. So for example, if something is happening in your life and something is very much bothering you to the point that you think that this particular hardship or problem is just never going to end, that you are going to die with this. Well, just know that just like your life is going to end one day, your problem is going to as well. And I understand that that's a very harsh way of looking at things, but it is sometimes the reality of it. Everything in this life is going to come to an end, whether that be a good thing or a bad thing. It's just the rule of life, it's just the rule of nature, it's just the rule of God. If you find yourself becoming arrogant and you find yourself just very power hungry and actually doing bad, and you catch yourself and you're like, oh man, I have to change. Well, what's the main motivator? Well, there's been arrogant people before you that lived, and there's been more powerful people before you that have lived. And guess where their end was? They turned to dust, just like you will as well. So what's the point of being arrogant when we are all going to the same place? If you're indulging in immoral behavior and just chasing your desires at all times, then remember the destroyer of pleasure, which is death. It essentially takes away all pleasure from all the different desires and all the different luxuries that we have in our lives. Remember death, and remember death often. Remember that you will eventually perish, just like your ancestors did at one point. Even if they were ruling the lands of whatever country that you're from, you're going to perish. You're going to die. Every single luxury, every single desire that you have is going to come to an end, and every single hardship that you face is also going to come to an end. So don't be arrogant, and don't be completely depressed about this life either. And trust me, I understand you're probably thinking that death is just the end, but it's really not. It's just the beginning. But that's a religious take. Obviously, I'm Muslim, so I believe in an afterlife. Anyways, guys, this was episode number 98 of the Daily Lessons podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button because it means the absolute world to me. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys.